We are Greg and Leah, the host of Evolve, the #1 podcast about relationships, and not just the tender or toxic romantic ones, but all kinds of relationships with many people, places, and paths.
And we aren't here because we know or understand it all, simply because we are working to evolve and asking others to join the evolution.
So join us in this next episode of Evolve.
Welcome back to another episode of Evolve with
Greg
and Leah, and we're just going to dive right in because we have some special guests today with us. We have Jennifer and Ryan, our co-founders of Mercury Coach, and I'm not going to waste any more time talking because we got a lot we want to dive into with their meat of what they offer and what they are doing with their lives. So Jennifer, Ryan, go ahead. You guys can jump in.
Hey, I'm Jennifer Love. You can call me JLove. That's my nickname. And
I'm Ryan. You can call me Ryan.
Okay. JLove and Ryan. I like it.
Awesome. And we're co-founders of Mercury Coach, as you said. And I'll let you lead with your next question.
So tell me a little bit, what is Mercury Coach? Because that's going to be the first thing everyone wants to know. What is Mercury Coach?
Mercury Coach is, it's essentially Ryan and I, and we are on a mission to give leaders, entrepreneurs, parents, total access to their personal power, to their authentic self. And we do that through a very unique set of tools that I didn't know about until recently, that directly remove all of the negative energy, fear, the trauma from the deepest part of your mind. And we'll tell a little bit of the story about, what this is and how we found it a little bit as we go.
Okay. I definitely have a lot of questions, but I feel like maybe they might get answered as you guys start sharing your story. So if you want to dive a little bit more into that, like as far as, what it is that you guys, it's very unique, I would have to say. Like not something, because I am a life coach, and I think when we talked a few weeks ago, like I was like, are you a life coach then, or what is it? And you have a whole different approach, like that's very unique.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's like I guess I am, because isn't everything about life?
True,
in a way. So Ryan and I, we're partners. We're married. We've been together for 28 years now. And we had this really sort of movie love story where it was that love at first sight kind of moment where we saw each other and time slowed down, and we just both had this amazing deep knowing. And because of him, I believe in soulmates. I didn't believe in them before.
Oh, nice.
But here's the thing. Things were really hard. Things have been kind of shitty off and on.
Thank you for your honesty.
28 years.
Wait a minute, you've not had a happy, wonderful marriage 28 years all the time?
Yeah.
We have,
on occasion.
On occasion.
It's up and down and up and down. And we've had so much struggle along the way. We've almost broken up, several times. All of the stuff that, that happens in relationships has happened in our relationship.
Yeah.
And now what we realize is, in many ways, we are just fundamentally incompatible. And yet, that incompatibility and the struggles that have come out of that, and some other things we'll talk about in a little bit, have catalyzed so much incredible personal growth and evolution that I wouldn't trade. So it's this really crazy paradox that what challenges me about Ryan is actually what challenges me about myself.
Oh, yes. Exactly.
Gosh,
yeah.
Reading my mail.
Yeah. We have just had this conversation ourselves not that long ago. We were talking about something that happened at work, I think for you. And you're like, you know what? If it's still triggering me, that's someone else's behavior, it's something that I have to address in myself. So you guys are on the same vibe as we are.
You got it. Yeah, your podcast is called Evolve, right? And this is a key piece of evolution, is recognizing
right
your own power and your own responsibility.
Absolutely.
So,
And that's Greg is going through like a handbook for Stoics, and that is kind of the thing. Like, what do you have control over in your life?
Not just control, complete control.
Complete control. And it's really, the answer is simple. It's just you and your emotions and what you decide, how you handle life, how you choose. So,
yeah, totally.
But I think we feel like there's a lot more we have control over, that sense of a false illusion that we have all this control. But I want to go back to what you said. I love that you were just that transparent with like the we met in this like firework, the film kind of romantic scene. Like Greg and I, it was the opposite. Like love comes softly for some people, and other people like you, it might have started with a firework. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. There's so many different ways to do life and to do relationship, and to say that it's one way is the way it's supposed to be is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So many different ways that work the way that we need them to work.
Exactly.
So we were together for a while. We married, and we had this agreement, no kids. We're on that path. And then when I was 38, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life. We have to have kids.
Baby fever kicked in.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
Wait, that wasn't the plan.
At first he was like, no, thank you.
I guess I can do that for you.
Yes.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, so we did that, and then things just got really, really hard, really, really fast. We had been, living this sort of international lifestyle where we were living abroad for 14 years, and then we had our daughter, and we're like, oh, we're in Beirut. We're not going to raise our daughter in Beirut. We need to go back to the States and be near our grandparents. We came back to San Francisco, and we started to live a much more traditional lifestyle. Ryan got his job, and he's been at the same company for, I think, 12 years now. It's been a long time. So, and we bought the house, and we settled down. We had a second child, and I started noticing that things that I really didn't love about my own childhood and the way that my parents spoke to me, all of a sudden, those words were coming out of my own mouth. And I started to sound like the worst aspects of my own, my own memories of my childhood. And I started immediately, I was like, oh my God, I need like a communication coach. I need to figure this out. And I started learning and studying about parenting and it fundamentally led to personal development in many ways.
Right.
But the thing is that the more I studied and the harder I tried, the worse my family continued to get, to the point where when my daughter was 9 years old, she was not only diagnosed with social anxiety, general anxiety, ADHD, and depression, she was having suicidal ideation. She was having like just these awful episodes where she would run out of the house into the backyard in the middle of the night, get fetal, start wailing like, I want to die, I want to die, I want to die. She ran away several times. And then Ryan, and it was to the point where we were just like, oh my God, we don't know what to do. She was in therapy, she was on medication, and it was so acute. And we were just really like at our wit's end. And then in this moment when this was a low point where we actually checked her into like a hospital for observation overnight, because we were just didn't know what else to do, and we were being told to do this. That same week, Ryan came to me and he said, I have to tell you that I'm also suicidal.
Oh my God.
And he had also been diagnosed with anxiety and depression, and, very similar. And I was just like, oh my God, like, I've got to just stop everything and figure this out. And so we both turned our attention to trying to understand what was really going on. And in that process, we found some tools that at first we didn't really understand what they were, like how powerful they would be. We thought that they would be things that could help our family a little bit, soothe some pain. And then we started to follow like this arc of, I'll call it like golden breadcrumbs of curiosity, and eventually landed on these tools that we'll tell you about in a minute. I'll let Ryan go into that in more detail. But these tools, we started to use them on ourselves. And the changes that we began to experience were so profound that 2 months later, everybody was like off of medication. Everybody was out of therapy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was nuts. It like happened so quickly. And it turned out that it wasn't like we'd had our kids in therapy. We had trying to figure out what was wrong with our daughter.
Yeah,
it turned out it was us. And when we started to make these changes and our bodies, our entire physical systems just shifted. The energy that we were bringing into the environment, the way that we were experiencing our kids and each other and ourselves changed. And those changes caused everybody's nervous system to just like
regulate again. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we looked at each other, and there was this moment we were just like, oh my God, we need to bring this to everybody. Mm-hmm. Every parent should have access to this. And so that was the beginning of our mission, and that's really what we want to bring to the world. Is we had no idea how much was possible. When you talk about evolution,
right, yeah,
like I've never come across more powerful tools.
Well, and I love that, bringing that in, the evolution and stuff of what you're saying. I mean, that's the whole point of this podcast, of how are we as humans evolving out of unserving actions, beliefs, ways of being, programming. And I am so curious about so much here, but I want to keep moving forward because, again, I'm sure
on my edge
that,
of my seat. What are the tools?
What are the tools? Because even listeners are just going to be like, oh my gosh, they might really locate themselves with something that you're saying or have experienced, because it's very deep and very traumatic for someone so young.
Yeah.
For your daughter.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it turns out, she was just like, kids are antennas. I mean, our bodies are antennas.
Right.
And kids, there are some kids who are really sensitive. Mm-hmm. And I suspect that a lot of the anxiety, a lot of kids who are experiencing anxiety are actually very, very sensitive. Ooh, and they're just tuning into their environment, and they can't distinguish what's them and what's, outside of them.
Well, and I've heard it said before, kids are mirrors. They're mirroring whatever their environment is. So you're just, reiterating that as well.
They vibrate the same as everything else in the room. They just can't articulate it or understand it.
Yeah. They don't have the frontal lobe development that we should, as adults, have, to process stuff. But, definitely, like, I have a lot of questions, but, I want to also hear the rest of this story.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's dive a little bit into these quote tools that. So I think one of the big things, what you just said, is really important, right? And there's two different modes or parts of our brain and they work very differently. There's this frontal lobe, this rational mind that we're in love with in the Western world for sure. But there's also the subconscious, in my training and Jen's training, we call it the unconscious. But it's this other older part of our mind. And a lot of people still kind of think of that part of the mind as sort of the place where painful emotions and trauma and all that lives. And it's true. It's where memory lives. But it turns out that part of our mind is probably running 80 to 90% of our lives every day. All of our behavior is being driven from that part of the mind, and most of it we're actually not consciously aware of.
Right.
And so when in the modern world everyone's talking about we need to understand our history and our background and all of these things, we can say now that with truth that absolutely that's not necessary. Like the tools and processes that I'll talk a little bit about they're just that. They're processes that your mind, anyone's mind is happy to follow, and it will actually rewrite and release all of the pain that we absorbed when we were young. It's that pain that actually powers our triggers, that powers the way we respond in the world. And so, instead of learning to manage or become more aware of ways that we might be responding, we can just erase it so that the actual urge to become angry or the urge to cut somebody off in a conversation or that anxiety that's building up in our body, it just disappears.
Right.
And so we don't have to learn to manage anything. And so So that's really, that's a lot of what Jen was talking about with kids, and what what you were saying, Greg, is exactly right. Like, kids are, the kids are experiencing what's going on around them, and when we're young, especially before 6 or 7 years old, we really don't. We really don't have enough understanding, and it's not about understanding. It's just our body is trying to protect us from the day we're born.
Yeah.
And in the early years, it doesn't have all of the benefit of the wisdom that we acquire later in life. But what I think isn't well understood is that the layers of memories that are being created when we're young and when we're in sometimes difficult situations that have nothing to do with us in many cases, but we absorb it anyway, right? And our brain starts to try to protect us by generating different people's minds generate different strategies, even for similar situations. That's also really important to understand, is that each of us has a unique set of experiences that have built up in our mind. And we may manifest those as being quick-tempered, easily frustrated. We may manifest that as having a hard time focusing or having a lot of anxiety. And we may manifest that as being a people pleaser or tending towards being easily hurt. They're all results of experiences we had when we were young. And the amazing thing is we can just release them. And then those reactions stop coming. We don't have to learn to do anything. We don't have to learn to be anything. A lot of the people I work with, they talk about initially they think they need to learn to respect, they respect their own boundaries, for example, or they need to become more confident. And it turns out that what's in us already is so much more than we would ever imagine, but a part of our mind, in an effort to protect us, has literally been shutting down our own power.
I was just going to say block it off. Yeah.
And we can map that very easily now, and we can erase it directly. And then all of this power just comes out. And suddenly people defend themselves, or they defend their boundaries without even thinking. So I tell people, we say, I need to learn to defend my boundaries, or I need to learn to connect more with my kids or my partner. And I can promise you that's not the truth. The truth is your body already knows how to defend your boundaries, and it knows how to connect with your partner and your kids. But some part of your life experience has taught your body to stop connecting because it thought that would be safer.
Yeah.
And as adults, that no longer serves us, but it's still 80+% of our day. Our body's just responding the best it can automatically without our awareness. So, when that noise that's inside us, all that negative energy builds up, some kids, like our daughter, are so sensitive that even, my own anxiety and depression was resonating in her, and she thought it was hers.
Yeah.
And the tools that we use are they're very unique combinations. We studied hypnotherapy. Both of us we're trained deeply in hypnotherapy, but we also noticed that the general approaches to hypnosis are typically use a lot of what we call suggestion, and that's sort of asking your mind to kind of think differently or be different. And what's really much more effective is actually your mind knows which are the memories in your early life that are the ones that are now causing self-limitation or not access, to your full authentic self. Okay. And your mind is willing to rewrite and release things from those memories. And so we ended up using a combination of hypnosis tools, and neurolinguistic programming was something I studied quite deeply. And we have a really powerful way of being able to help people. Given a real pragmatic problem, let's say that somebody is, quick-tempered. They get frustrated really easily, or they're prone to feeling like everyone's against them. Whatever you might think of. We can have a conversation with the person, and actually their mind will map out for us exactly how their memories are creating that behavior, that experience for them in the present. And then we can use very light hypnosis techniques to actually cause the mind to rewrite and release all of the negative and traumatic experience from their deep mind. Okay. And then all those behaviors just disappear.
Oh, do you have a question, Gregory?
Sounds like a mushroom trip, but...
Yeah,
better than drugs.
Yeah, but a lot of my clients have actually done plant medicines, and what's really powerful about this is it's totally precise. Unlike a mushroom trip, which is you get what you get, and some people get get good stuff, and some people don't get what they're looking
correct.
for.
And
people will say, "Oh, you get what you need." I don't believe that's true at all. Like it's a bit of luck. You get what you get, but this process is totally precise. It's extremely scientific. We map people's minds and then release exactly what their minds showed us they needed. And so in 6-7 hours, people suddenly are just totally different. They have their relationships open up. We've had people that have come to us for like professional challenges, let's say not building their business the way they wanted to, and have ended up like with a total transformation of their romantic relationship without making any effort, because the same deep causes that were blocking them in their professional life were also affecting their romantic relationship.
So you're rewiring people's brains.
Would you call it rewiring?
We're helping them rewire.
Rewire.
Yeah, and that's what some of this sounds a little similar to, if I'm sure you guys have studied this as well, but like Peter Levine's like somatic, because you mentioned about how it's in your body already, like your brain and your body knows what to do. Like, is it similar to that?
So it's actually, in an important way, it's dissimilar, which is to say your body is holding trauma. There are several people, Vander Kolk and others, who know that like trauma and memory is held in the body. Right. But the difference is, I can find out exactly what your brain is doing to you, and I can unwire it in hours. Like it's just so much faster than any other. Somatic approaches are also a bit hit and miss. They take more time, and they tend to not be as deep. Whereas your brain is actually the one that knows where all this is, and your brain will tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, the mind creates the emotion. The emotion resides in the body.
Right.
So there's a hierarchy. So you can deal with the emotion, and you can get it out of your body, and you can feel amazing, and it'll last for a while. But if the issue is that the mind is creating this, and you haven't dealt with it at that level, the mind will create it again, and then it will start to accumulate in your body again. So we go a level up. And then you could combine it with somatic therapy to accelerate the release if you really want to. Sure. But you don't need to. It works its way out on its own. The emotions release. And then over the next, few days, maybe weeks, the body continues to just, rebalance itself.
So let's go back to what this mind map. You've said this many times, so that you're mapping someone's mind. What is that, and what is the process you're actually doing there?
Sure. Yeah. So the process starts with asking, like, for people to spend a little time looking around their whole life for where they notice dissatisfaction, where they might be resisting or reacting.
And I'll jump in and say, like, we're going to give you some specific questions to answer at the end. That's just the very beginning of the process. But what Ryan's saying right now, like, anybody who wants to begin this process, like, you can start this right now based on what he's sharing.
Okay,
so
awesome.
I want to get it.
Well, we like that. Something we can start now that's effective now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we actually will just share some of the questions right now because it's flowing nicely. The way we work with people one-on-one and is to get them first to identify what is the thing that they really want to be different in their life. Okay. So this isn't sort of a general approach. It's extremely precise and extremely scientific. And so someone would say, let's say I'm not speaking out and really being the leader I want to be in the office. Or let's say I'm noticing that I keep complaining about my partner in certain ways, but I kind of know that there's something in me, like we talked about at the beginning, that we know that if we're complaining about our partner, there's something in us that's also, mirroring. And so whatever that thing is that's most important to someone, we start with that and we say, okay, now we want to use very specific memories. So we're taught in our culture to generalize everything and to make it abstract, and that works against your mind is actually totally concrete in terms of where the actual traumas and early life experiences are. Right. So what we want to do is go into a very specific memory. Let's say that our partner doesn't take out the trash, and every time we see that full trash bin, we say, I always have to be the one to do everything around here. Like, no, I'm not respected. The work that I do isn't appreciated.
Nobody appreciates me.
Yeah.
Let's
I have never had that ever in my head. I'm sorry.
You are the trash man.
I know it's a foreign idea,
Yeah, never happened.
That's right. And so what's important here is to go into a specific memory of when that happened, even if it's happened hundreds of times. We want to get into one memory And we want to then make sure we're looking through our eyes in the memory. Sometimes people will see memories as like a movie where they can see themselves. And that's called disassociation. And we don't feel our bodies as well as we will when we're in the memory, as if we were really there looking through our eyes. And so you want to make sure that you do that. Most people do, but sometimes people don't. And so it's a good reminder. Now, when you're looking through your own eyes in any memory, you will be able to feel the emotional state of your body in that memory.
Yes,
whether
absolutely.
you were excited, upset, whatever. And so the first piece is that, to make sure you're feeling the actual emotion. Because when you do that, you may discover that you're feeling if one person, I should say, is feeling the emotion of hurt when they look at that trash can, like, nobody cares about me. Somebody else may actually notice that they're feeling anger or lighter weight frustration. Somebody else may notice that they're feeling that they have some thoughts going through their head that are telling that story of like, my partner doesn't respect me, or I do all the work around here. Each of those situations is slightly different, even though the net result is that we all recognize is I'm upset with my partner because they didn't take out the trash.
Right.
But the specific experience, the emotions in your body, and any voice that little dialogue or that monologue that might be playing in your head, each of those is very specific to how your mind just triggered by seeing the trash can full, right? And so that experience that you're having in that moment, you can ask your mind, what does this remind me of? What does this represent to me? Mm-hmm. These are key words. How is this a problem for me? And I want to point out very clearly, not why. How is this a problem? Which asks your mind to focus more on the experience you're having. One, we don't want to get into our intellectual minds, because our intellectual mind doesn't actually know where these key memories are. But the deeper part of us does. So these types of questions will usually lead someone to have an aha. This feels just like a time when I was 12 or 15. And that's how we begin to follow the chain. That memory that you might have when you're 12 or 15 or 20 is not the origin of the problem, but it is an important step for your mind. And by asking these questions, your mind will start to wake up the connections to the exact memories that are powering that feeling of hurtness or not respected or not valued. Because the reality is those things are not, they're not intellectual things. They're just memories of hurt that have then created strategies that your body has been using to protect you that no longer serve you. And so once we have those origin memories, basically in a conversation, I would be doing that in a very quick way, in a very easy way. And then I'm creating a plan for myself. I'm literally taking notes through all of this, and I'm creating a plan so that I can know then when we go into a light trance state in hypnosis, we're going to actually go back and we're going to have your mind actually address those memories in a way. There's a very special technique that will allow the mind to then decide it can release the emotional pain from the memory physically. And this is what's similar to other somatic techniques.
That's what I was just going to say. It sounds exactly like that.
Shake.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and so what we're doing is, instead of using the body to try to release emotion, we're going to use the mind to release it, and it will manifest in the body. Like some people shake, they have pain in physical places in their body, but it always passes very quickly. And when that happens, that just drains the power out of those beliefs and that reactivity, and people are just completely different.
So let me pause you there real quick, Ryan, because do you have a question first, Gregory?
No, I was just thinking, my mind creates pictures, and I'm thinking Gandalf and taking memories out.
That's not Gandalf, was it? That was in Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, yeah.
That's not Gandalf, though.
No, he's not Gandalf.
No, that's a good point, actually.
Yes.
We don't erase the memories. We allow the body to release the negative energy from the memories.
Yes. And that's where I was saying, like, it sounds so similar to somatic healing in the way that Peter Levine does his, is because he's returning to that core memory, I'll call it, and releasing that, what you should have done. Because a lot of times what he explains in there is like, it's trapped in you. Like, you didn't do the response or the action you should have, and this gives you that outlet to release it. Like, animals in the wild release these things. We're one of the few species that doesn't. We hold them on, and like you said, kind of build our own coping mechanisms. Before you continue, I want to ask you if I have this right, because like I'm trying to simplify it in my own mind. So I kind of wrote it as this way. Like, so you start with choose. Like, so I choose the issue that I want to take care of or address and tackle, correct?
That's right.
And then we go into...
Like, you can scan your life, like look at the different aspects of your life.
Okay.
You can kind of say, happy, not happy.
Okay.
What's the problem?
So after I choose kind of that issue, then I'm going to, you kind of ask us to return to like a memory that maybe caused that core feeling, or where I had that feeling or emotion, and I can, bring those feelings back up. So then I'm returning to it. And then lastly, or next, I should say, I'm asking the question, what does this remind me of when this happens? Like, do I have the right order? Like,
you're close. You're
okay.
Yes, you have the right
Help me
things.
out.
There are a couple little details that in between. So once you've identified, what are these repeated patterns that are showing up again and again? Maybe it's, I hear people like, I always date the same guy over and over and over again. And so,
people
that's
always
like
cut me off in traffic.
Yeah.
What's that?
People always cut me off in traffic.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Or I keep being unhappy with my job. I keep leaving situations. Or it can be little things, like we keep having the same argument over and over and over again.
Sure.
But look at the repeated patterns where you're reacting, where you're self-limiting, where you're self-sacrificing.
Okay.
And and especially in the context of relationships. So you notice first, like, what are the repeated patterns? And then you can also ask yourself, like, okay, like, because this is we're talking about relationships. Like, what's the thing that drives you, like, absolutely batshit crazy about your partner, about your kid, maybe about your parent, any relationship? Like, what is that thing that just drives you absolutely nuts?
Right.
And then you pick the thing, like a very specific thing, not a general thing, but like something that's very, and jump in if you have any, because any specific, the more specific and concrete and detailed you can get, the better.
So be very specific. Okay.
Right.
This is really important because again, we're taught so much in our modern society, like to make abstractions and to find patterns, right? So people are like, I procrastinate a lot or whatever. And that's not good enough, because you may procrastinate in two different places in your life for totally different reasons.
Yep.
And so we want to make sure that we are getting, like, I'm committed, and I tell people, like, if I don't get you the result that we agree on, I'll give you your money back. I don't think I've ever met a coach or a therapist who'll do that. But I know with that kind of confidence. But to get that, I need to make sure that we're actually dealing with very real, concrete situations and not just kind of abstract kind of patterns.
Yeah.
So you think of a specific situation that happened recently as you can, right? Like, I had this argument, and when so-and-so said this, I got so furious. And then you go and close your eyes and go into that memory, right? And notice what you're feeling. Notice in your body. What are you feeling? Notice what emotion, like, where are you feeling, like the clenching up or the pain?
Yeah.
And what is that emotion? Is it hurt? Is it anger? Is it, is it loss? What is it? And then also listen in and notice what are the words. And not everybody has access to this, right? So, like, we all experience things differently. Like, I always had a really hard time hearing that inner voice that people talk about.
Right.
But a lot of people can hear it. So, listen, like, notice what you're saying to yourself, what you're saying about that person, what voice is in your head, right? Like, why is it always me? I can never get ahead. These kinds of things.
And do you have your clients, like, they would verbalize this, or are you just asking them to think of it internally?
We take them through a very specific process of pre-work, and then we have we have like several hours of inquiry and conversation.
Okay.
To do this at obviously a much more comprehensive way. But we do ask people to do this, a version of this in the beginning. And so then once you've connected with that feeling, that emotion, you then ask your deeper knowing, what does this remind me of? What's the earliest memory that I have of this feeling or this experience?
Okay.
Or knowing this thing to be true, this belief, like, I can never get ahead. When did I first realize this? What does this remind me of? And it doesn't have to make sense. In fact, it usually doesn't. And that's why the rational approach is often doesn't get us really the results that we want, because this stuff is not rational. It does not follow a linear logical pattern.
Yeah.
So it's super associative. So you just trust that first thing that comes in. And this exercise can yield some incredibly profound aha moments.
Oh yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah, so it begins that process of bringing to awareness those real early life experiences. We say early life, I mean like certainly before 7, but usually before 4.
I was going to ask you, do you find that your most common place that people would go to is that early childhood? That's where the trauma originated from.
Always. Whether they go there quickly or sometimes it takes a couple of steps. But I mean, most of our clients have at some point believed they had some kind of memory of their birth event, and that there was trauma in the birth itself or in stress around them. All but one of my clients has believed they've regressed into past lives. And to be very clear, I don't know personally whether past lives exist or not. What I know is that literally every client except one, so we're talking about many tens of people, like recently have said that that's what their mind's showing them. And the important part about this process also is that my opinion doesn't matter. Like, I don't ever direct someone's mind to the right answers. Your mind has the right answers. And so all we do is we work the process with whatever your mind is giving you, and you get the results.
Exactly.
Right? So
okay.
Whether you have a past life or not, I don't know. But symbolically, that's what your mind is working with.
Right.
And so that's what we work with.
And like you said, if it gets you the results, I mean,
you're trying to solve.
Yes. And if you're getting those results, exactly.
That's interesting that all, you said all, goes back to early childhood.
Well, and I think I read something about this like 10 years ago or so that, we come here born into this life very liquid, but we harden to a hard cement status before the age of 7. And I thought, oh my gosh, how much happens in childhood before the age of 7 that no one really acknowledges. And again, that's why like one of the reasons we started this podcast was because we are still, as a society, as a species, sometimes I even feel like it doesn't even matter where you go in the world. I'm not sure that there's a lot of forward thinking everywhere, but like we're just so stuck in, nope, this is the way it is, that's how it's done, and we don't do it any different, we don't question it. And that's where we were just like, forget this shit, like let's move forward and evolve out of this because it's not serving us. You've used the term as well as we have, like what's no longer serving us.
Hell yeah.
So like we've got to make adjustments. But I do want to cut in right here real quick. We're going to take a pause here. We're at 36 minutes. So for those of you out there listening, we are going to take part 2 of this because I feel like we've only touched the surface and I have a lot that I want to
before we do that,
ask there.
How can we get a hold of you? How does a client call you or get in touch with you?
Yeah, so that they can also follow up. But then we are going to do an episode 2 here. So if you want to give us some real quick, the contact information before we...
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can reach us at mercury.coach. So Mercury, like MERU. Now I can't spell it.
See, I couldn't spell it the other day either.
Mercury.coach. And there, if you do this exercise and you begin this process that we shared with you, when you want to clear it up and release it, then just set up a session with us and we can talk about what that would look like and what's possible.
Awesome. And I'm also going to put what you're saying, all the links in the bottom in our description as well. So you can always just click the link.
Awesome.
But yes, we're going to continue. If you want to hear the rest of this story, we're going to continue with part 2 with Jennifer and Ryan, because this is super interesting and super, super important. I feel like it's already a track that Greg and I have been walking in the last several years. So I love that, like what you're sharing, and it just goes so deep so quickly. So until next time, Gregory?
Be evolved.
Yeah, like, subscribe, comment, and connect. And yes, be evolving, people.